Wesley Inpool, my friend and my co-worker, talk to me about Dawn of War 3, a game that you've seen in action ahead of E3, but I imagine this is going live during the show itself.
Yeah, well, I've seen a fairly lengthy gameplay demo.
Okay. Hands off, was it?
Hands off, yeah. A sort of scripted affair designed to give you a sort of sense of how the game works, essentially.
And that's what we're seeing in the video now, this level you saw from start to finish.
Yeah, so Dawn of War 3 is a kind of fusion of the first two Dawn of War games. So the first Dawn of War was sort of a very traditional RTS, big armies, base building, resource gathering. Dawn of War 2, they sort of changed approach and focused more on hero units, so you'd have fewer units on screen. Dawn of War 3 is kind of like both put together. So there's base buildings back, big armies are back, which is great. But they also have the sort of hero units from the second game. And on top of that, they've now got new sort of super units, which are like these huge building size units, like the Imperial Knight.
We'll see some of that towards the end of the video. I think the Imperial Knight shows up a little bit later on. But the hero unit that we're looking at right now, well, what's his whole deal?
So he's sort of Dawn of War Space Marine favourite, Gabriel Angelos. He's sort of commander level Space Marine, and he's very much a melee focused unit.
Sure.
He's really good at infantry, killing infantry. So so Dawn of War has got a sort of an interesting new mechanic for these elite units. Before each battle, you pick 3. Okay. So there's a few to select from, and you pick 3. And they each, on the battlefield during a match, they each cost a different number of elite points to deploy.
Right.
So Angelos, for example, doesn't cost that many. So you can get him onto the battlefield quite quickly. And because he's good at, he's quite mobile and he's good at enemy infantry, he's a really powerful early game unit that you can use to harass your opponent or make ground early on. But if you're more of a sort of turtle player, you might want to bring a elite unit that requires more elite points and would be better at other things that you would use endgame. For example, the Imperial Knight, which is much better at destroying enemy armour. And then you can, but you can't really deploy until the end game when you've got enough elite points.
Are elite points a new idea for the Dawn of War series, or is that okay? So how do you earn them? Is it
that's just something
ticking
as you're playing the game.
So there's a bit of a risk involved in terms of how early in the match you want, if you're playing multiplayer, how early you want to add one is.
So Relic hopes that this system will mean that you can tweak each army to your individual playstyle. So even if you've got like a Space Marine v Space Marine match.
Sure.
It can feel different because you've got a different set of 3 elite units.
Okay. So in the gameplay we're seeing right now, this is obviously a campaign level. Is it an early one? Did you get any sense of where in the game this takes place?
No, I didn't get a sense of where it is.
Right. So this is, as you said, it's quite a scripted thing. We haven't actually got the base building here because you're kind of fighting through an area and new units are turning up as you go through.
So what we're seeing is sort of standard Space Marine introduction sort of thing where you're controlling a few number of units, but things quickly escalate and we get a sense of how the scope of the battles in this game, which is much bigger than Dawn of War 2. And you can have a lot going on at once, right? You can have loads of Space Marine units like scouts, snipers, standard sort of assault marine stuff. And then you can have your dreadnoughts, your vehicles, and you can have the elite units like Angelos and the super elites like...
Yeah, I wondered if that... I wonder how overwhelming that will feel, because obviously with the elite units, with the heroes, you've got abilities to think about. He's got the leap, he's got his kind of spin, AoE attack.
Yeah, big hammer.
And you're always going to have to be thinking about that. Every time they're off cooldown, you want to be making best use of those. Yeah. That's one concern. Then you've got your troops at large, which the bulk of your force, if you lose them, you're in a really bad spot, which you're worrying about. Then the dreadnoughts are acting slightly differently, and the massive unit, the Imperial Knight, is doing a whole other thing. That's a lot to think about in one moment. Yeah,
so you might have noticed that Dawn of War 3 has a different art style compared to the previous games, which were more striving for photorealism, particularly Dawn of War 2, which had a lot of detail. There's less detail in Dawn of War 3 on the individual units, and it's sort of more cartoony.
Okay.
And I spoke to Relic about what they're going for with this, And one of the things they're trying to strive for is more clarity.
Right.
So things that sort of pop. There's a bit more brightness to what's going on. I think you can say it's safe to say that it looks a bit like the popular MOBAs, right?
Or like StarCraft 2 has a lot of that as well. Like the units are always very easy to identify.
Yeah. Dawn of War previously, the units haven't always been very easy to identify on screen because everything is very gritty and grounded.
They're sticking with the 40k like miniatures they want to try and represent.
Yeah.
As they are.
Exactly. But it's a different look. It's definitely a different look. And part of it is to try and help people sort of be able to pass what's going on easier, because there is like you say, there can be a lot going on in Dawn of War.
Do you think that works? And do you think is that a trade-off you're happy to make?
Well, at first I was a bit sort of worried about the art style, because one of the things I love about Dawn of War 1 and 2 is it really captures the 40k universe in a way that most other games just have failed to.
Mm-hmm.
Like 40k is a really depressing universe, right? It's like endless war.
Mm-hmm.
Worlds are basically rubble, and the only reason like entire races exist, it seems, is so that more people can fight and die. It's really it's a real slog, and the Dawn of War 1 and 2 gave a real good sense of being sort of fighting in the dirt, essentially, like the feeling that and it's very gory, very violent. The Warhammer 40k universe is full of like blood and limbs and like people getting chopped up and destroyed and stuff. And I loved that art style. I loved the way they looked. So when I first saw it, I was a bit concerned. So the goriness is still there, but it's much sort of more colourful and bright, and things are clearer.
Okay.
But there's there's more to it than that. They're also going for with the new art style. They're going for a quick sort of responsiveness feel. So Dawn of War 2, you could say Relic's RTS games in general can sometimes feel a bit sluggish.
Right.
Like you'd give a unit a command and eventually something would happen. You weren't always sure that they were responding to you very quickly.
Like with StarCraft 2, you talk
Everything
about
pops,
clicks per minute.
Exactly.
That's not always something you think about with Exact Company Heroes and Dawn of War.
Exactly. And when you think about the popularity of MOBAs now, everything is ultra responsive, like hitting abilities, moving your units. Everything is really crystal clear.
It's all about micro,
and all about micro, and things just feel fast. And so this new art style is in part about trying to get that kind of responsiveness in terms of like making units do stuff when you tell them to in Dawn of War 3, which I think when you think about the trade-off they have, which is perhaps not going for this sort of gritty, high detail, photorealistic look. Maybe the gameplay benefits will make it all worthwhile.
And to be fair, the Dawn of War series has such a dedicated multiplayer following. I imagine gameplay going ahead of some of that visual style is probably what a lot of people want to see.
Well, I think that they're thinking ahead, right? They want this sort of game to last a long time. It's been a long time since Dawn of War 2 came out, and people are still playing it. And to their credit, Relic has updated that game with new stuff. And some of the expansions they released for Dawn of War 2 were wicked. I remember I've played pretty much all of them. And their hope is for this, that it will last a long time. And that's not going to happen if the gameplay isn't modern.
Mm-hmm.
If they just recreate Dawn of War 1 and Dawn of War 2, sort of put them together, and it just feels exactly the same, then that probably won't cut it in a sort of age where like more people are playing League of Legends and Dota 2 than all other PC games combined, pretty much. So, like I said, I was a bit concerned about the art style at first, but having spoken to the developers, I sort of get it.
Sure. Do you think the audience is there and ready for Dawn of War? I know with I followed StarCraft 2 across its very long life cycle.
Yeah.
And by the time we came around to the third expansion, it did sort of feel like that game had peaked, and more than that, the genre had peaked. Did they talk about that at all?
So one of the things that I've been really interested in about Dawn of War 3 is whether they were tempted to basically ditch the RTS genre and just make a MOBA.
Sure.
Because so many people, like MOBA is so hot right now, so many people are making MOBAs right now, that Relic needs to be successful. It needs to sell copies and have players. And part of me thought, God, they might actually go sort of a more MOBA route. But they said that Dawn of War was always going to be a straight up RTS. That was the first thing basically, and that they're hoping that it will be relevant through the strength of the IP, and I do believe it's a strong IP, and just the way that the game feels different because of the responsiveness and having these big units. And so I guess that's the hope. As you say, RTS is not what it was, but I think Relic can carve an audience out for itself with this.
If there is another studio aside from Blizzard that can that deserves to and can lead this genre, it's Relic. Right?
They're really great at what they do. Company of Heroes is really good.
Yep.
Dawn of War games are really good. So they have pedigree.
Both series still maintain big multiplayer crowds as well.
Exactly, yeah. So it's going to be. I think it will be tough for Dawn of War 3 to, be a phenomenon. But I think it can do well enough for the whole thing to be worthwhile, which is as a fan, as someone who's been waiting for this game for a long time, that makes me happy.
Excellent. All right. So aside from this gameplay, when do you think we're next gonna see more of Dawn of War 3? Obviously, it's got a presence at E3 this week.
Big gameplay reveal at E3, which is the stuff we're seeing now.
Yeah.
It's a PC game, so Gamescom.
Right.
The home of PC games.
The home of PC strategy games.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that we'll see a lot more of it in the run up to Gamescom and at Gamescom. They're not talking about multiplayer right now, the standard sort of developer response, but multiplayer will be a massive part of Dawn of War 3, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a multiplayer reveal at Gamescom.
Excellent. Well, we'll be there and have more on that then. Thanks for watching.
Cheers.
For now, they'll seek vengeance for this.
They can try.